Hickok 45 here. Welcome to the Hickok 45 Talks channel. I'm back over here with my buddy, the cowboy. You think I should trust him? As many bullets I have put on him, and here I am sitting with my back to him. Could be risky, huh? Well, you see the title. I'm going to talk about music. Someone asked me about music. What's your favorite music? Talk about that and everything. And wow, what a big topic. What a big topic. So I could take 2 hours on this one, couldn't I? But I won't, I promise. I growed up listening a fair amount to what my parents liked, which is another topic, isn't it? Yeah. Whatever's being played around the house. And they liked country music. They grew up with that. My dad played banjo and guitar some, and all my relatives did. They'd come over and have a hoedown and play Going Up Cripple Creek and all that stuff, and the Beverly Hillbillies theme song, my Foggy Mountain Breakdown. All that. My dad played the banjo, 5-string banjo, had a master tone, which we have now. But so anyway, I grew up with that. Buck Owens and Johnny Cash, Johnny Horton, you name it. You name all of them. And Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings. That was a big part of the soundtrack of my early childhood and all the way up through. And then, of course, when I was, when the Beatles hit, I was about 13 or 14. Perfect age, right? And like most teenagers, we're not necessarily going to be enthralled with only what our parents are listening to, except these days that's changed a little bit. So I got into listening to the Beatles and the radio. Back then, everybody, in the early 60s, you listened to whatever came on the radio, AM radio, initially. And so whatever the top 40 was, what was being played was what you heard, unless you bought albums. And I don't know, my family was a little different. We had we had this TV and console. It was different than most of them. It was an upright thing. It had a big drawer pulled out the bottom, had a turntable in it, and slots on the side, would keep albums in. But every album we had, was Johnny Horton or Johnny Cash. It was the stuff my parents had bought. For some reason, I don't know, even when I could have talked them into some different music maybe, but just didn't do it for some reason. Didn't play a lot. Now, when I was in high school, I had a stereo in my room, and I would play. I had some records and picked up Simon and Garfunkel and some things like that. I remember, but I don't know. I didn't grow up with all my favorite records, piles of them, like some kids did. For some reason, we were outside all day doing stuff, But anyway, the country music was always a big part, and then rock, classic rock. When we didn't know it was classic at the time, right, in the '60s and '70s, but that was a huge influence. And so I loved the Beatles, and you had to be there to know, like every other song played on the radio was a Beatles song, and they were good songs. It wasn't just some stupid stuff, as we all know. They were quite the artists, right? And then we moved on later into the 60s, there was a lot of other music too, but then you had in the early 70s, you had Rolling Stones, of course, which I liked. You had Led Zeppelin. It got harder as we got into the early 70s, right? And then I went off to college and listened to I had a suite mate. Now, he wasn't sweet, but we had adjoining rooms, double room bathroom between. We called them suites. And he had this nice stereo set up and loved Led Zeppelin and the James Gang. And that's where I really got introduced to all that music. And he was always playing that stuff. We'd crank it up, open the doors, and that, just really got into all that. Grand Funk Railroad, So I'm a little schizophrenic. I never did turn against country music. When I go home, of course, that's what Dad was playing, be in a car with him or a truck. It was Buck Owens or Johnny Cash. And of course, they were played on the radio, too. not necessarily a country station. I'm not sure there was a country station. I guess there was, like in the early 60s. So it seemed like Johnny Cash was as likely to be playing on, what was it, WSAI, I think, was a kind of the pop music in the Cincinnati area, northern Kentucky. But so I heard all that, and I didn't dislike any of it. I remember Johnny Cash, Ring of Fire, playing all the time on whatever station we were listening to, you know, and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and you name it. So I liked all that, and I still do. I still do. I even like a little classic music, but I like classic rock. Of course, grew up with it. Music takes you back to those places, doesn't it? It's on that other topic, as I said. So anyway, basically, the answer to this is I really like music, and I have specific people I really like. As I got a little bit older into college and everything, I fell in love with Bob Dylan. I heard John Prine on the radio up in Cincinnati area one time. I finally figured out who he was and found an album. I had to search one down, in the record stores, and finally did. And I really, really liked John Prine, and went to a couple of his little intimate concerts at the Exit Inn in Nashville in the early 70s. And I just liked really good lyrics. And I like Bob Dylan for his writing ability, and John Prine and all that. And I enjoyed that kind of music. But then again, I also enjoyed crazy Mick Jagger, and you name it. But it was so different back then. And really up until, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, what was the first big leap away from, I guess, the Walkman or something? When people started being able to play their favorite music on a little compact disc player or a tape player, whatever, and have earphones on, and not bother other people with it, which was a good thing. So there was advantages to that and disadvantages, as I see it. It's just like with TV and everything else. Everybody's in their own little silo, or their own little bubble when it comes to music and entertainment now, right? Even within the family. Think about it. You see it in some of the old movies, where their mom is pounding on the ceiling with the broom handle, turn that darn music down, or whatever, Well, there was a stereo in the room, and everybody could hear it. You not turn it up too loud, or whatever. You go into that room, and the daughter's playing this, and somewhere else maybe the son's playing a different music. Maybe dad's got some different music on his radio out in the garage, but you're hearing what everybody's playing. You know what their favorite music is, and you even know the songs because you hear them. Maybe you're in the environment with someone else, and they got the music on. Maybe it's not blaring, but they've got it on. You hear it in the car, whoever controlled the radio, you're hearing it. And as a young person, you might be hearing for 1,000-mile drive, mostly what dad likes or mom likes, or whatever, the station they want to listen to. So there was a shared culture. And that's why I know so much about country music, and I like it. If I had grown up like a lot of you, all of you, maybe most of you, you young people, then, and I'd been walking around the house in 1958 or 62 with my earphones on, my earbuds, and my phone, playing whoever it was I wanted, I would have never heard Johnny Cash maybe play, or anything my dad listened to, or my mom. I wouldn't have heard any of that maybe. And they wouldn't have heard anything I was listening to. So it's kind of weird. It's such a different world. I mean, I lived in both, and so I can appreciate the difference. Which is a whole different kind of cultural thing too. We could talk about at some point, where we just don't share the cultural experiences anymore. We don't have to, thanks to technology, right? So anyway, I'm very eclectic with music. There's not much of it that I just hate. I'm not into heavy metal as much. John is, and I know people my age that are. I never was really into that, the Black Sabbath and the Metallica and that as much. In fact, I used to really not like it at all. But over the years I've heard a few songs from some of those bands. They're classic songs, some of the best ones. It's really good. But it's just in general, it's just all kind of sounded the same to me. So I couldn't get into that as much. But I personally, I like the best of almost all of it. I could enjoy a Barry Manilow song, a John Prine song, a John Denver song, Chris Christopherson, love him. The Highwayman, and I had that album called Wanted, right, with Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, the Highwayman, basically, I guess mostly on there. Great album, wore that thing out. Will a Circle Be Unbroken? Some of those great country albums, loved them. And Tom T. Hall, I met some of those folks are in the 70s. I met Johnny Cash once. I met Tom T. Hall. You wonder who that is. Who else did I meet? I guess, well, I met several. I had their students or their sons or daughters in my classes when I was teaching, over the years. Bobby Goldsboro and, of course, Alan Jackson and others. But yeah, that's it. I just basically enjoy most music. There's hardly any artist that I'm going to hate. There's probably something they've done that I do enjoy. Now, when I put on music to just listen to music, it could be anybody. I don't keep a playlist anymore. All that has changed so much over the years. I need to do that on my phone, I guess. I had an iPod. I had a great playlist. Bought every song through iTunes. Didn't pirate any of it. And I don't know what happened to that thing. It still may show up somewhere. It worked forever. Because I went through and just bought my favorite songs, whatever genre, from. I had everything on there. You were like John Denver or Waylon Jennings, Alan Jackson, you name it. Led Zeppelin. I love the Rolling Stones. I love them. I remember when the Satisfaction was a big hit. That was 64, 63, right in there. I was at my cousin's house in Indiana, staying for a week with my cousin, and I remember we played that song over and over on their stereo system. Just kept playing that record 45, and so I go way back. Yep, go way back, and I like it all. Just depends on what I'm in the mood for. It's kind of like shooting. Sometimes you're in the mood for a bolt action, sometimes a muzzle loader, sometimes an AR-15, right? So, and I just really admire Mick Jagger. What a man. What a man. Life is good.